The last clip ended with my front door closing from the inside. I installed a doorbell camera because porch stuff kept disappearing. A package, the welcome mat, garden tools, even my cheap wind chimes. It was small loss, but it made my skin tight every time I stepped outside. I wanted proof more than revenge, something solid I could point at. When the camera lit up and the app showed my porch, I told myself the problem was now contained. For a few days the alerts were normal: headlights, squirrels, a neighbor cutting across the lawn. Then I started noticing the mat shift, just a little, always after midnight. I would see it in the morning and stand there like it was accusing me. I watched the clips at lunch, squinting at darkness, trying to decide if a shadow was a person or just my porch light haloing mist. One evening I remembered the spare key, the one I used to hide under the mat for emergencies. I had stopped doing it months ago, but the habit came back the moment I felt watched. I told myself I was being practical because the camera would catch anyone touching it. I slid the key under the mat, pressed the mat flat, checked the live view once more, and went to bed. I woke to my phone buzzing against my pillow, not one alert, but a cluster of them. Front door motion, front door motion, front door motion. I lay still and listened, because the sound I feared was not footsteps. It was silence that felt occupied. The house gave its usual noises: pipes, the fridge, the bathroom fan, and then a faint click from downstairs, like a latch settling. I opened the app and stared at the live feed, my porch empty, my mat in place, the night calm. My thumb hovered over the timeline, because I already knew it was not a cat. I scrubbed back 10 minutes and hit play. The porch light snapped on, and a figure in a hoodie stepped into view, steady, unhurried, like he had a reason to be there. He crouched, lifted the mat, and his hand came up with my spare key. He held it for a beat, almost as if he wanted the lens to focus. Then he leaned toward the camera. He said, "I am putting it back. You can relax." His voice was low and plain, like someone returning a borrowed tool. Then he slid the key under the mat and smoothed the mat flat. My stomach dropped, because the clip did not end there. He stood, walked to my front door, and used something in his hand to unlock it. I did not hear the lock on the video, but I saw the door move inward, just enough to swallow him. The camera kept recording the empty porch, and I sat in bed staring at it, waiting for him to come back out. But nothing moved. I whispered, "Get out," even though no one could hear me. I called emergency services, and my fingers fumbled the screen. When the call connected, I spoke fast, and the operator told me to stay upstairs and keep the line open. While I was talking, my bedroom door eased open, slow and polite, and the hallway light cut a thin line across my carpet like a measuring tape. The hoodie figure stepped in. His face stayed hidden under the hood, and he held my spare key between two fingers as if it was a coin. He said, "You check your clips, you check your locks, you still make it easy." I backed up until my legs hit the bed and I said, "Leave now. The police are coming." He looked at my phone and said, "That is a phone call, not a shield." He reached for the phone. I pulled it close, and he grabbed my wrist and twisted until pain flashed up my arm and my grip failed. The phone hit the floor, and I heard the operator calling my words into the room. He slapped my cheek with the back of his hand, hard enough to make my eye water. Then he crouched, picked up my phone, and ended the call with one calm tap. He took my charger cord and looped it around my wrists, pulling tight until my fingers tingled. He did not rummage. He paced my room like he was counting steps. He opened my closet, lifted my jacket, and said, "You leave your garage unlocked. I learned your habits." He pocketed my car keys, then looked at me and said, "I am not here for your things. I am here for the quiet after." When he left the room, he did it like a guest. No rush, no stomping. I listened to him move downstairs. Then the house went still again. I worked the cord against the bed frame until it loosened, and my wrists burned as I freed one hand. I stumbled down, dizzy and shaking, and I found the front door closed, the chain unlatched, the lock turned, like he wanted to prove he could touch anything. I yanked the mat back, and the spare key was gone. My phone was on the entry tile, screen dark, because he had turned it off. I had pulled up the last clip with hands that would not steady. It showed him on the porch, lifting the mat, placing my spare key back, then lifting it again and holding it to the lens. He said, "You will look for it tomorrow." The timestamp showed he left 5 minutes before I woke up. Every night at 3 a.m., my phone lit up with motion at my front door, and the same person stood there like he was waiting for me to notice. The first alert happened on a Tuesday, and I blamed a late delivery. I rolled over, squinted at the live view, and saw a delivery driver on my porch, box in hand, body still, face pointed straight at the lens. He never reached for the bell. He never checked the label. He just stared. 90 seconds later, he stepped down, walked off the frame, and the clip ended. By morning, there was no package, no slip, no tire marks I could see from the window. I told myself the camera misread a shadow, or that he left for the wrong house. I watched the clip again, and the way he stood made my throat tighten. It was not wandering attention. It was focused, like he could see through the glass of the lens into my living room. The second night it happened again at 3 a.m. The same uniform, the same box, the same stillness, and the same 90 seconds that felt longer than the rest of my day. I sat up in bed and turned the volume up, waiting for steps, for the rattle of the gate, for anything that said a person was actually outside. The audio was quiet, only a far car and my own house settling. On the third night I stayed awake. I made coffee, kept a lamp on, and sat on the couch with my phone in my hand, watching the minutes crawl. At 2:59 the porch light snapped on and he was already there, close enough that the camera caught the texture of his shirt. I whispered, "Ring it or leave." He did neither, and he held his stare as if my words were nothing. I called a friend the next morning and tried to sound normal. I said, "I think a driver keeps stopping at my door." My friend said, "Report it and lock your place down." I told him I would, and I meant it, but I also felt embarrassed, like I was making a problem out of a person doing a job. I filed a complaint through the company site anyway, and I saved the clips. The fourth night he came back, and I heard it this time, a soft step on the porch boards through my open bedroom window. I watched from the hallway, not close enough to be seen, and the camera view matched what I could barely make out in real life. He stood there, box balanced in both hands, and he faced the lens with a patience that felt endless. After 90 seconds, he walked away, slow and steady. On the fifth night, I tried talking through the doorbell speaker. My voice came out thin, and I hated hearing it echo from my own device. I said, "There is no delivery here. You need to go." The driver did not react, not a flinch, not a glance around, nothing. When the timer in my head hit 90 seconds, he stepped down and left again, and the porch light clicked off behind him like a curtain closing. During the day, I started checking my locks twice, then 3 times. I fixed the loose latch on the side gate, and I moved a chair under the door handle at night, even though I knew it would not stop a determined person. I told myself I was being careful, and I kept thinking about the box he held. It was always the same size, always sealed, always never left behind. The 6th night, I called emergency services before he arrived, and I kept my voice low so it would not carry. I said there was a person coming to my door every night and staring into my camera. The operator asked for details, and I gave them, and then I waited. At 3 a.m., the porch light turned on, and he was there again. I said into the phone, "He is back." The operator said, "Stay inside. Officers are on the way." He did not leave early that night. He stayed for the full 90 seconds, and I could feel him on the other side of my front door like weight in the air. When the timer ended, he stepped off the porch and walked down the path. I watched him move toward the curb, and the camera view held him longer than usual because the streetlight was bright. At the curb, he paused and did something different. He turned around to face the house. The camera caught his front for the first time, and my stomach clenched. He was wearing my jacket, the one I had lost 2 weeks ago, the one I searched for until I felt foolish because I was sure I had just misplaced it. I remembered the hook inside my garage by the side door, and I remembered that I left that door unlocked more times than I wanted to admit. The driver stood under the streetlight, my jacket on his shoulders, and he looked straight at the lens again. I said into the phone, "That is my jacket." The operator told me to stay calm and keep watching from inside. The driver lifted the box slightly, like he was presenting it, and he tapped the side once with his knuckles. He then turned and walked down the street with my jacket moving with his steps, and the clip ended as he vanished beyond the camera range. My hands were cold, and I realized I had been holding my breath without noticing. The officers arrived minutes later, but minutes felt like an hour. I opened the door only when I saw their lights and heard their voices. I showed them the clips, and I pointed to the jacket, and my voice shook when I said it was taken from my garage. One officer asked if I had more missing items, and I said I did not know anymore. The other officer walked to the curb and looked down the street, then came back and said, "He already knows your routine." That morning I went into my garage and stared at the empty hook like it was proof of a larger mistake. I locked the side door, I added a bolt, and I moved the hook to a place no one could see from the driveway. I kept checking the app every few minutes, expecting another alert even in daylight. At 2:58 the next night, my phone buzzed, and I felt my body tense before the screen even lit. The porch light came on, and the box was there again. He whispered through my doorbell speaker that he could still get close whenever he wanted. It has been 6 months since my ex moved out, and I told everyone I was fine. The house felt bigger without his shoes by the door and his tools on the counter, and I tried to call that space freedom. I kept the doorbell camera after the split because it felt smart, not dramatic. Then I started noticing a car parked across the street after dark, headlights off, engine running low. At first I convinced myself it was a neighbor waiting for someone. The car would sit there for an hour, sometimes 2, and then roll away without a sound. I only recognized it on the 4th night, when the streetlight caught the dent near the rear bumper. It was his car. My stomach tightened in a way I had not felt since the night he put a tire iron through my windshield last year. I did not tell anyone right away. I did not want to explain why I stayed as long as I did, or why I ignored the warning signs before. I just started checking the live view more often. Around 9 or 10, the car would slide into place across from my driveway. The headlights stayed off, and the engine hummed faint through the window glass if I stood very still. One night I stepped onto the porch with my phone in my hand, the camera recording, and I waved at the car like I was acknowledging a neighbor. The engine cut off immediately, and the car rolled forward and disappeared at the corner. I went back inside with my heart racing, telling myself that was proof enough, that he knew I saw him. I thought being seen would make him stop. He did not stop. The idling continued almost every night. I called a friend and said, "He keeps parking outside." My friend told me to report it and document everything. I filed a report, and an officer drove by once, slow and visible, but the car did not show that night. The next night it was back in the same place, like the patrol had meant nothing. The tension built in small ways. I stopped sitting near the front windows. I parked my car in the garage and kept it shut. I started sleeping with my phone on the pillow beside me so I could check the feed without moving. The camera felt like both protection and reminder, because every time it pinged, I knew it could be him again, watching from the dark. Tonight the car arrived earlier than usual. I watched it pull up just after 8, the street still holding a little light. He stayed inside for hours. I paced the living room, then forced myself to sit, because I refused to let him dictate my movements. Around midnight the driver door opened, and he stepped out. He did not slam the door. He closed it carefully and crossed the street at an easy pace. I stood in the hallway, staring at the live view as he walked up my path. He looked thinner, but the same tension lived in his shoulders. He stopped at the edge of the porch and glanced at the camera, then stepped forward until his face filled the frame. He pressed the doorbell, and the chime rang through my house like it used to when he still had a key. I did not open the door. I spoke through the speaker, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. I said, "You need to leave." He leaned closer to the lens, and I could see the reflection of my porch light in his eyes. He said, "I know you are watching. I just wanted you to see how easy it still is to get close." The words settled in my chest like weight. I reached for my phone to call emergency services, but he moved first. He stepped back and something heavy came into view in his hand, the same tire iron he had used on my car last year. Before I could say another word, he swung it into the doorbell camera. The feed jerked sideways, then went dark. The porch light still shone, but my screen showed nothing. The silence after the cut felt louder than any shout. I called for help anyway, describing what had just happened and the car across the street. I kept my back against the hallway wall, listening for the front door, for the handle, for any sign he was testing the lock. Minutes crawled past. I heard footsteps on the porch, then the scrape of metal against wood as if he was dragging the tire iron along the railing. He rattled the doorknob once, not hard, just enough to tell me he could. I said through the closed door, "They are on their way." He did not answer. Instead, I heard the tire iron strike the side of my car in the driveway, once, twice, the sound sharp and final. I forced myself not to run to the window. I stayed in the hallway and kept talking to the operator, describing every sound I heard. When the patrol cars finally arrived, their lights washed the street in red and blue. I heard his car engine start, and by the time officers stepped onto my porch, he was already turning the corner. They took my statement and looked at the broken camera hanging by its wires. One officer said, "He wanted you to know he was here." I nodded, because that was the point. Now the camera is gone, the porch bare where it used to watch for me. The car has not returned in 3 nights, but I do not trust the quiet. I replaced the camera with a stronger one and added extra locks to the doors. Every time I see headlights slow on my street, I feel that same tightness in my chest. I know he proved what he came to prove. He can still get close.